people, they'll just know that you can be walked on. They'll just know that there's not a you there with a backbone and a ball sack. And having a backbone and ball sack is one of those things that makes you like look really comfortable in your own skin. The truth. She doesn't want to know she can walk all over her man. She wants to know she has a strong man, that you're man enough to be her man. But she's gonna shit test it. She's gonna want to find out, are you strong? And when you go to set a boundary, she's gonna push against it. I think about being comfortable in your own skin, where my mind typically goes is that I've released shame, right? I'm not walking around, not wanting to be found out. What will people think of me? How will people judge me? But I like your question because honestly, I never had made also the connection to that I am boundaried. And that aspect of being boundaried, people can now feel my strength. They can feel like I'll say no, stop, remove myself, that I'll even get in their face, right? If necessary. And I think that also projects that confidence in myself. So boundaries, I'd never had linked that together about boundaries or being part of being comfortable in your own skin. Because if you can't say no, stop, if you ever fucking do that again, we're done, right? Don't ever call me Kevin, right? If you can't draw those lines, people, they'll just know that you can be walked on. They'll just know that there's not a you there with a backbone and a ball sack. And having a backbone and ball sack is one of those things that makes you like look really comfortable in your own skin, right? That you're comfortable stepping up where you need to step up.
That sounds awesome. Thanks, Tom.
Let's dive into boundaries. And again, as I said, earlier, almost on all four of these, I wonder which one is the most important. And I don't know that I can say this one or this one because they all play out. Because again, I see these mistakes that nice guys make in their relationships. And I'll go back to what I said at the very beginning of this program, that if you are not sure, if you are not confident that you can set the tone and lead, make your needs a priority and stay differentiated, set good boundaries and be a good ender, it would be stupid of you to get into a relationship. It'd be stupid of you to even talk to a woman because they're going to eat your lunch, right? So they're all crucially important. Now, the things with boundaries, for me, what is to me so amazing is that culturally, we do not get taught boundaries. Very few children learn boundaries in their school system, from their parents, from their church, culturally. What we learned at a very early age is that the big people get to do what they want to the little people, back when we were little people, because they're bigger. No other reason, but they're bigger. They got all the power. So here's the deal. I did not learn about boundaries until I was in my mid 30s. Now, I already had a doctorate in marriage and family therapy, and I'd never had heard of boundaries. I was in my second marriage. I had never heard of boundaries. And I had gotten into therapy. In fact, I got a new therapist pretty early in my nice guy recovery. And this, I just fell into such good places. I actually went to therapy. I went and joined a 12-step group. I went and joined a men's group, all trying to figure out why me being a nice guy didn't make my wife happy. I did all of those things trying to figure out how do I make my wife happy and get her out of being in such a bad mood and make her want to have sex with me. But luckily, I'm so grateful. I fell into lots of good places. You've heard me talk about that 12-step group for sex addicts where I started releasing shame. Got into, a therapy group with a woman therapist who taught me about boundaries. I joined a men's group where the therapist had written books on sexual shame. And I wrote No More Mr. Nice Guy while doing my work in that men's group. So I come into this therapist's office and it's in her home. And it is an older woman, a Mormon woman, somewhat older than me. And in our very first session, she does the boundary presentation. Now, I don't know if she did that like with every client in the first session, or if she could just see this guy needs the boundary presentation. She just could tell that I needed that. So we go kind of down into the basement of her house, and she puts this string on the ground. And she says, stand on that side of the string. She says, that's your side. And that line there is your boundaries. I'm on the other side. And she said, I'm going to walk across your space, put my hands on your shoulder. Remember, this little, old Mormon woman. And I'm going to put my hands on your shoulder and push you backwards. She says, when you begin to feel uncomfortable, I want you to stop me. Now, that's all the directions that she gave me. Now, in true nice guy form with no boundaries, I start about 2 feet behind the line, right? Isn't that a typical nice guy boundary thing? We don't even know where our line is. We're not even up at the line. People can walk into our space several steps before our alarms even go off. Oh, somebody's in my space. Somebody's violating my boundaries. And even then, we don't even know that it's a boundary issue. Then she starts pushing on me. And I go back a couple of steps and I go, okay, stop. Well, she didn't stop. She did tell me when you begin to feel uncomfortable, stop me. She didn't say, tell me to stop. She said, stop me. And I go, stop now. I'm still backpedaling. I said, stop. Then finally, luckily, I'd played, American football most of my life since I was a little kid, got into my best linebacker stance, got my feet planted, got square, got solid, put my hands up on her, and I said, stop. And then she just smiled and clapped her hands and said, good job. And I'm going, what the fuck is this? And so then she explains to me about boundaries, about the need to be clear where your lines are, the need to be clear about who comes into your space, how far they come in, what they can do while they're in there, when it's time for them to go, right? She said, you are the decider of those things. And I'm going, really? You can decide those things. You can tell people, I don't want to hang out with you, or I don't want to listen to you, or don't get in my space, or you're on my foot, or back up, or if you do that again, we're done, or if you do that again, I'll punch you in the face. You can do that. I didn't know those were behavioral options. And again, I'm already in my mid 30s in a second marriage with a doctorate degree in relationships, right? And again, the reason why I didn't know about that and why nice guys don't know about that is because when we're small, the big people get to do what they want to do, and the little people have to go along to get along, or there's pain, there's punishment, there's shaming, there's yelling, there's screaming, there's hitting, there's belts to the backside, there's timeouts, there's all those punishment, painful things if you don't go along to get along. So then we grow up to be these big people where we have no fucking clue that we can say, we don't even fucking clue that we can do what we want, or that we can say no, or stop, or don't do that again. I often will give the example. Can you imagine being like, 7? Think back to being 7. And I don't know what your family situation was, but, think back at 7. And, we had a hall broom closet that had a couple of belts hanging in them that had the buckles removed, but leather belts. And that's where mom or dad went when we were bad. Honestly, for the life of me to this day, I still don't know why I got spanked with a belt. I don't think I was a bad kid, right? But I must have done something occasionally that pissed off mom or dad. So can you imagine being 7? Dad gets the belt, taking you down the hall to your room. You know you're going to get the belt across your ass 2 or 3 times, and you're going to have to stay in your room, this and that. And while dad's taking you there, you say, wait a minute, dad, stop, time out. Let's take a moment. Dad, I don't know why you got a bug up your ass that you think hitting your son with a belt is somehow going to change his behavior for the better, or why you think it's going to make you feel better if you hit your son with a belt, or how that's going to change any situation. Tell you what, Dad, let's do this. Dad, you go sit in your green recliner. I want you to think about this for a while. Why you becoming emotionally dysregulated and hurting your child with a leather belt is somehow a good idea. And while you're thinking about that, I'm going to go down the street and play for a little bit. And when I get back, you and I are going to have a conversation about how you might go about doing this in a more effective way to both deal with your own frustrations or pain or childhood issues, and how you might actually provide discipline and structure that might be beneficial to me as a 7-year-old. Right. We could have those conversations, right? No, of course not. That didn't happen. So then we grow up to be adults with that little 7-year-old's brain that says, well, I guess I just got to let them do what they want, or I just got to stay out of trouble, or I just got to avoid, or I just got to keep things hidden well enough that nobody reacts to it. And this is how we then approach relationship. We get into relationships not having any idea about boundaries, not saying we can say no or stop, not knowing we get to decide who comes into our space, what they get to do, how long they get to stay, when it's time for them to go, and whether or not they even get to come back again in the future. We don't even know that. All right. And like I said, we nice guys often pick somewhat impaired partners to try to get with. Often women that have their own issues around their own trauma, their own emotional dysregulation, right? Their own bad behavior. And we live in a culture nowadays that almost glorifies women's bad behavior, like women can do whatever they want to do. If a man does it, he's an asshole. I'm not playing the victim role, but it's almost like the feminine's encouraged to just be as bad as they want to be, and that should be okay. Okay. So if we're going to have any chance at having a relationship that blesses our life, that blesses our partner's life, that grows us in a powerful way, we have to have boundaries. Now, I'm going to throw out some basic principles about boundaries, and we're going to put you in a breakout room and let you practice my favorite boundary practice that I teach in my workshops in the mentorship program. But let me give you a few principles about boundaries. Boundaries, believe it or not, let people get closer to us. If you didn't have boundaries, you'd have to do one of two things: either avoid people altogether so you never got hurt, or put up big walls so people don't get close enough to hurt you. Boundaries, knowing you can say no, stop, yes, I'm going to, don't do that, later, whatever. Not knowing knowing we can remove ourselves lets people get close to us, and therefore boundaries are such a good thing, and one of the most untalked about things in the whole world of how do we have good relationships. Now, I know most nice guys, when they learn about boundaries, their fear is that there's going to be a negative reaction, especially if they set a boundary with a woman. All right. And I know I've counseled countless couples where I would do the same exercise with the guy in front of his wife or girlfriend that therapist did with me in her office. Put the string on the ground, back him up, teach him, talk to him about how his wife really does want him to set. And I've had women clap and applaud when I taught their man to set boundaries. And the guy will just look at his woman dumbfounded and go, "You mean you want me to stand up to you, dear?" And she goes, "Of course I do. I don't want to walk all over you. I don't want to feel like a bitch. I don't want to feel like, my man's a pussy." The women will say that. And then I'll say to the guy, I said, "Okay, she's telling you the truth. She doesn't want to know she can walk all over her man. She wants to know she has a strong man, that you're man enough to be her man. But she's gonna shit test it. She's gonna want to find out, are you strong? And when you go to set a boundary, she's gonna push against it. And you're gonna say to her, 'Dear, you told me you want me to set boundaries.' And she's gonna say, 'I do, just not this one.'" Right? She's going to test it. She's going to push it. Okay. So women applaud when I teach men boundaries. So yeah, some people might get a negative reaction. I started setting boundaries with my mother once I learned about them because she wanted to talk about my dad complain about my dad every time we talked. And it just kept getting worse and worse and worse. And she just kept pushing through it. And she guilted and got angered and got passive aggressive and cried. I finally had to not talk to her for 15 years because of her way she kept pushing through the boundaries. People will do that. It will happen. And in fact, if you set a clear, loving boundary with somebody, and their response to that boundary is they go on the attack and say, "You're doing something bad and you're wrong," those people are probably professional boundary invaders. And my only answer for professional boundary invaders: get the hell away from them. And ironically, the place you're most likely to find professional boundary invaders are in your family and or with a partner. That's probably where you're going to most likely find them. Okay. So boundaries, you may get pushback. And that's good because that's about getting to rejection quickly. But more than that, you create a space that lets people get close to you. So yeah, you may get negative reaction, but my view of that is then get away from those kind of people. I don't hang out with them. Another rule of boundaries is it's not about getting people to be different, it's about getting us to be different. I got out of a 14-year marriage with my second wife. She had a lot of good traits, and I was deeply in love with her. And I'm grateful I was with her because I wrote a book. We're talking today because of Elizabeth, my second wife. And she pretty consistently treated me badly for about 14 years. And I got out of that relationship and I started going back to 12-step groups to work on that. That was my men's group. And I would kind of, vent about some of this with some of the women I would date. And the response I started getting from women is like, that woman was crazy. And then they go, and what was wrong with you? Right? I realized the fact that I let someone treat me badly for 14 years was not about them. It was all about me. I let that happen. I was not willing to stop it, remove myself, and say enough is enough. That's on me. So boundaries aren't about getting somebody else to be different. They're about getting us to be different. Now, an important part about boundaries is to be able to set a boundary, you have to be able and willing to remove yourself, a little or a lot. Okay. Now, as children, we couldn't. We weren't able to remove ourselves. As adults, often is we're not willing to remove ourselves. We're going to come back to that in a minute. So, removing ourselves sometimes just a little. I remember with my ex-wife, we'd be on the phone and she'd be like venting or the conversation would be going like that. And, back in the days where you held a phone like this, right? I learned to just say, listen, I'm going to get off the phone now. Call me back when you're in a better mood. And I would lovingly hang it up, not, slam it down. About 45 minutes later, she would usually call me back and say, I think I know what was bothering me. See, I had to remove myself. Number one, to let her figure her stuff out and just to get me out of that loop, right? I didn't threaten her. I said, I'm going to get off the phone now. Call me back. I gave her clarity about, some container. Call me back when you're in a better mood. I'd get off it. Another example, more powerful example, I was dating a woman, probably the last woman I dated before I met Lupita. And we'd been dating a couple months and she got pissed about something. And then so she like went like a day and a half without like returning messages, calls, just, ghosted me. And then finally, and so I leaned back, and finally, when she responded, I said, we need to talk. She goes, oh, do you want to, she worked at the mall. You want to come to the mall now? I said, are you at work? She, I'll take a lunch break. Well, her first thing was, well, I left my phone at home. That's why I didn't. No, bullshit. You've called me from work before. You know my number. All right. I just basically laid it out. I don't know what bothered you about this. I knew what she was bothered about. But I said, I was clear with you. I was direct with you. You knew the whole situation. But now you're giving me this, passive aggressive, not returning my calls. I said, that does not work for me. I said, I'm done. She goes, no, you're right. That was wrong. I gotta have another chance. And we were actually going to go away that next weekend to Dave Matthews Band for a weekend and camp out. She goes, can I still go to Dave Matthews with you? And I said, I don't know. I said, I'm going to have to think about it. I said, I'm not going to give you an answer yet. And I thought about it and said, okay, you get one more chance. I said, you're on fucking probation. I told her, you're on probation. You ever do anything like this again, we're done. Just be clear about that. And I mean, she had her issues, her anxiety, but she never did that again. And she had respect for it. Now, one other quick boundary story, and I know we're counting down on time. I was dating a woman. Well, we hadn't had sex yet, but we'd been on 4 or 5 dates, and she'd read my book, and I'd been out of town for a weekend, and while I was gone that weekend, she didn't respond to messages. So we got back together and went on a date. And I said, you didn't really get back to me last weekend. I said, are you dating other guys? And and she said, well, I kind of see my ex sometimes. And I go, well, were you hanging out with him this weekend? She goes, yeah, I was. Oh, okay. I said, yeah, I was just curious. And I said, are you having sex with your ex? And she goes, no, when I broke up with him is because he went looking for a Russian bride. And I thought, well, that's why I broke up. And so I said I'd never have sex with him again. And I said, do you do boyfriend, girlfriend things with him? I do go down on him every now and then. I said, okay. I said, I'm not going to tell you what to do. But I said, you can have him as a friend. But I said, if you want to keep dating me, I said, no boyfriend, girlfriend behavior with him or anybody else. She goes, oh, okay, okay. Next week, we got together on a date. She goes, you know what? I told my girlfriends what you said about no boyfriend, girlfriend behaviors with other guys. Every one of my girlfriends said, that's a good man. You hang on to him. And she goes, you know what? I've decided I'm not going to see that guy ever again. I don't want him in my life. I want to get in with you. So my boundaries led her to behave better and want to get all in with me. Okay. So since I knew this was going to take quite a bit of time, second date rule. I love the second date rule. You know, it applies to men in a relationship. If a woman did something that you wouldn't put up with on a second date, you shouldn't be putting up with it in long-term relationship. Okay, so how do you know where your boundaries are? Again, if you've attended a workshop with me, you've probably done the 5 and 5 exercise, where you write the 5 things you have to have for a woman to be a really great woman, 5 things you won't tolerate. This tells you where your boundaries are. If she crosses the won't tolerate line, no, she's not a really great match. And it's always funny to have men in a relationship do the 5 and 5, and you find out all the stuff they've been putting up with from the person they're with or from their ex. So we have to have clarity what works for us and what doesn't. Okay, let me kind of give you, I want to give you a little tool here. This is just my favorite tool. This is something you can practice. We're going to put you in a breakout room and let you practice this boundary exercise. Now, my rule of thumb for boundaries is that the best boundaries raise the consciousness of everybody involved. They're not always about saying, don't do that, or if you do that again, we're done. Sometimes it does, but usually it's more subtle than that. And here's how it is. If somebody does something and it hurts, or you feel bad, or you have a reaction to it, or it's jarring or jolting, here's what you do. There's these 3 little steps to it. Step number 1 is you go, ouch. You literally say the word ouch with some feeling. Ouch. Next thing you do is you say, that hurt, or that felt dismissive, or that felt condescending, or that felt controlling. Now, those aren't really feelings, but that you're telling them how their behavior landed for you, right? Ouch, that hurt. That felt dismissive. That felt demeaning. And then the third thing, with all curiosity, say, did you mean it to? Ouch. That felt hurtful. Did you mean it to? Now, this could be something they said, something they did. They forgot to show up, something they said they were going to show up for, whatever. You go, ouch. That felt dismissive. That felt demeaning. Did you mean it to? Now, this is inviting them into higher consciousness and you as well. And so sometimes people don't know that their behavior is hurtful. So they may go, no, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to hurt you. I apologize. Well, they wouldn't even know they hurt you if you didn't tell them. You would just keep it in and let it build and a wall would come up, right? So you've given them a chance to know they hurt you or they that felt controlling or dismissive or condescending. So if they say, hey, I'm sorry, I didn't mean it. Okay, all's good, right? You let them know it hurt, you're done. Probably, maybe have a short discussion, maybe not. Or if you say, ouch, that hurt, did you mean it to? And they go, you know what? Maybe I did mean to hurt you. I have been pissed off about this. Then you can say, well, tell me if you're pissed off at me. Don't keep it hidden. Let's have a conversation because I'm not going to put up with those kinds of things of putting me down or whatever. And then you have a conversation about it, right? Or if you say, ouch, that hurt. Did you mean it to? And they go, you're such a crybaby. Fucking man up. Don't be such a wuss. Get the fuck away from that person. You don't need them in your life, right? That person's just going to keep stomping on your boundaries and make you the problem for doing it.